Hey all, this is Chase from the All Blue Crew, and this is the final round of my Dofi run at the Wednesday night locals. And here we're going to be fighting the hardest matchup, but let me tell you, I've got the spice for the Dofi v Lucci matchup here. For those who don't know, Lucci is honestly like the hardest matchup for Dofi, the hardest matchup for blue decks in general, just because they have so many easy ways to just eliminate our threats. And we just don't have anything with Rush, so we can't just surprise them unless we're running like the one of fun of Rush Usopp or something like that. So a lot of people struggle with this matchup. This matchup is honestly not easy, but I might have the spice. I might have some tips for you here. So we do snap keep. I believe our opening hand here, just because it does have the Perona that had a Jinbei in hand as well. Just being able to set up top five. Top five not looking very good. Actually, sorry, no Jinbei in hand, but a Weevil in hand instead. little thumbnail action there. Just gonna show it off there. Yeah, so Perona not setting up the best top five, but we're just hoping, rubbing our hands together right now. Please no stage, please no stage, no stage on two, no stage. Oh baby, no stage on two, because that honestly, like, if you thought the matchup was hard already, right, going into black, them just luching you, all that nonsense. But once they find stage, if they have stage on one, you're just honestly cooked at that point. Like, you're out of here. So no stage on one. So I'm feeling pretty good now. So I think we're just gonna go ahead and swing 7, and go ahead and activate leader's ability, drop something into play off the top of the deck. And it is going to be a Mihawk here and going to swing 7 at lead. Now, my strategy, my tip for Dofi versus Lucci is just go as aggressive as possible. Take the play, right? So go first and just swing. Try to protect your attacks. Like, potentially try to protect your things from, like, swings, right? To a degree, right? Sometimes it's just better to let things go, but do force Lucci to instead use removal effects or KO effects to remove your board instead of just being able to freely swing into it. Does make the matchup a little harder for Lucci. Gonna go ahead and swing 5, and I'm like, I really want to attack with that. Now he is gonna go ahead and set it down to 3 here, but I don't foresee any way for him to be able to kill it at this point, so I am just gonna go ahead and spin that 2k. I do have the Gecko Moria in hand, as well as at least one copy sitting on deck at some point to get that 2k back. But because Lucci doesn't really have a good way to KO something that's at 3, that's like a 3 cost on turn 4 without a stage, I wasn't very afraid at this point. So gonna go ahead and instead play a Khalifa. Khalifa's hopefully, for the Lucci side, hopefully gonna put them into a stage. I do not want to see a stage at all. I'm instead seeing a Brook and a Lucci going in the bin, potentially setting himself up for a Gecko turn later on. There's a Helmeppo already in the yard as well, off the mill. My board is safe this turn. It's safe for a little bit, so we're gonna go ahead and untap the board, and we're just gonna go fast. We're gonna swing hard. We're gonna go fast. I'm gonna try to get stuff off the top of my deck, try to establish board presence while also just swinging heavy. So I think here this turn, probably what we're gonna do is we're gonna swing 7 with lead, activate a lead ability, and then swing 7 again. Unless I just hate the top of my deck. I am thumbing that Doflamingo, and it looks like I hate the top of my deck instead, so we're not going to go too aggressive this turn. We might end up just going like 6 and a 6. Going to go ahead and, yep, we're going to play out the Doflamingo. Must just have a straight Garbo. I did see a Kaido on top, so I would have hit it anyways, but we did find the Jinbei. Found a Jinbei into a Weevil. Pretty solid. There's also a Boa now on top. Boa pretty decent in this matchup. Boa being able to stop like a Gecko Moria from attacking. Bottom decking a Spandam, right? Removing some CP. That's one less CP threat to go into the trash to potentially work with things like Kaku or Spandine. So setting up top here, probably going to draw the Boa, going to play the Jinbei out. I do have a Weevil in hand, so I'll be able to Jinbei into the Weevil from hand. Weevil will draw me the pudding, and then I'll draw a Kaido, and then have another Weevil on top for the following turn. I think that's the general play, to stay relatively aggressive. We are going to just go ahead and swing double 6s. Lucci has a problem. It's called bricking. It can happen a lot. It can happen to a Lucci near you, and that they just brick really hard. Sometimes they just don't see any counters. So I'm just going to swing 5, and then I'm going to go ahead and just swing a 7k instead, because 7k is a lot harder to get out of. He does snap counter out of that with a 2k, 1k. So it does make me a little nervous. Potentially he does have the counter, right? Maybe this Lucci isn't bricking after all, but the Lucci hasn't seen a stage yet, and maybe I spoke too soon. That's 2 Don coming down, and there it is. There's the stage. Eni's Lobby, the bane of every deck that's playing against Lucci's existence, and that is the Eni's Lobby. It does -2 cost on a thing. He does go ahead and attach 2 to swing 6k. I could have countered out of that, but now with the stage being on the field, I'm a lot more afraid potentially of shenanigans. Gonna go ahead and send 7 at lead. I'm gonna go ahead and take that. I do have the opportunity to trigger the Gravity Blade here, but man, I'm really thinking about it. I could just, you know, bottom deck that Khalifa, but I'm thinking, you know, I could get some pretty good targets if the game does go long. Potentially like a Lucci, a Rebecca, something like that, to try to clean up the board if the game does go long. Now, my goal here in this game is to not make it go long. Please, please make this game go as fast as possible, because the longer Lucci stays, the harder the game gets for me, because he's just going to, you know, gecko into gecko into gecko into gecko unless he mills them all, which does happen. But now we're sitting here on the 7 Don turn. This is a turn I could just slam down the Gravity Blade, but I would say no. Do not do that. Targets are not good enough. All right. I know you have the Don, but don't do it. All right. Just because you're at 7 Don doesn't mean you have to Gravity Blade whatever's on board. I don't think the targets are worth doing. So I'm instead going to go ahead and swing 7 at lead, activating a leader's ability, and then that's going to leave me with 4 Don up to maybe do some other shenanigans with. So we're going to send 7 at lead. Top of the deck's going to reveal a Jinbei. Jinbei should be coming in tapped here. I'll fix it in a second. There you go. Jinbei is going to play out a Weevil from hand. Weevil will then draw something that's on top of Pudding. And then now, like, you know, if he potentially had a ton of cards in hand, which he doesn't, I could Pudding that. He's thumbing his hand here. Thinking about that 7k swing. And I think he did take it, actually. So, and then I'm like, you know, screw it. We go fast. You know, step on the gas, pedal to the metal, because I'm not trying to stick around until, like, you know, 5 turns past 10 Don, because I'm probably gonna lose the game. So we're just gonna go ahead and just swing 8. We're gonna pressure, right? He's down to 2. Lucci's down to 2, and it is now finally their turn 8. So their 8 Don turn. So yes, they could Lucci clean up some of my board, which is probably, or Gecko clean up some of my board. He does have the Lucci Helmeppo in the yard, so I do kind of expect that, right? When a Lucci hits 8 Don, you're just gonna go ahead and kind of expect that some shenanigans are going to happen. So we're going to go ahead and see Eni's Lobby minusing 2s on probably my Jinbei or my Weevil. I think the goal of this turn is to kill both the Jinbei and the Weevil. So yep, -2 on the Jinbei. Then we're going to see if he doesn't attack first, which likely he will, to make the numbers easier. He's going to go ahead and send 5k at the blocker. And I'm like, hey, I kind of want that blocker to live here. I know you're already setting yourselves up for a, you know, wombo combo Gecko into Lucci, like clear my 2 threats. I kind of want to keep that other threat alive. And you know what? These puddings are just getting worse and worse in hand. So I'm going to go ahead and just use both puddings at 2k out. And I'm just like, all right, I already committed the double puddings to that blocker. You know, I don't half commit here, right? We just got to go all in, right? Once you commit to save something, you better save that thing. You don't wuss out. So I'm going to go ahead and give him a 1k to keep that thing alive. Because, hey, that Doflamingo could swing for 9 next turn. Who knows? Doesn't have a Spandine in yard, so he won't be able to, like, Rebecca, Spandine, Lucci. So I don't have to worry about a blocker this turn. Going to go ahead and Lucci into Helmeppo coming in tapped here. Helmeppo is going to set my Weevil to 0, and then Lucci's going to clean up. And he's going ahead and just, like, pulling out the cards that he's going to put on the bottom of his deck. Just a little bit of a shortcut here. There we go. And then, yep. And then I just like, hey, what did Helmeppo target? And he's like, oh, yeah, this. So, gonna go ahead and wipe my board. You know, half my board, right? Doflamingo, man. Both my Dofis are gonna have hands and gonna come in swinging next turn. So who knows? So I do still have some things on board here going up to my 9 Don turn, I believe. Yep, up to my 9 Don turn here. And I'm still at 4 life. I'm feeling good, like feeling decent, right? Lucci's at 2, 4 cards in hand, and honestly, I do something a little nutty this turn, and we'll just kind of let it play out. So my thought process here is, you know, I could go Boa, pressure a little bit into Boa. So I'm gonna go 7. I'm gonna activate. We're gonna get out a Weevil. Weevil's gonna draw me a card. I see a second Boa. And now I can just play the Boa and stun the Moria bottom deck to spam him. He does counter out of that attack. So I am gonna Boa and just so maybe this turn wasn't as crazy as I thought it would be. All right, it's a pretty standard turn. Now next turn might get a little nutty. I could potentially run it back and like Boa do something again, right? To stun the Gecko a third time. But we're gonna see what goes on here. So hopefully my Hancock stays alive, but it's unlikely that that's gonna happen. But we'll see here what goes on. They're on the 10 Dawn turn for them. Let's see. They could drop another Gecko, potentially try to wipe some of my board again, which would be kind of annoying. I have a feeling that Weevil is going to get attacked at some point, probably by the Lucci. So we'll see here what they're going to do. I do not have counter in hand, right? I have like a 1k. I have a Kaido, I have a Boa, I have a 1k counter, and a Gravity Blade. So I'm not going to be protecting anything this turn. So I'm just sitting here just waiting for the nonsense to happen, right? When you're playing against Lucci and they get to 10 Dawn, you're just like, all right, what nonsense are you going to do to me this turn? All right, I'm going to play some things. All right, next turn, what nonsense are you going to do to me? How is my board going to disappear? So he's going to go and send 7 at Weevil. And I'm like, okay. Let's see here. I could just block it, right? And force him to do something else. So I'm just going to go ahead and block it. He just swings 5. Just 5 elite. All right, sure. Easy peasy. I'll take that. That pretty much tells me that maybe he's going to play like a Stussy this turn. With leaving 9 Dawn up. And yep, we see a Stussy. Stussy's going to come down. Stussy, he treats it like a Saba. I'm like, hey, man. That's a Stussy. Yeah, Stussy's card on board, right? And then that Stussy is gonna pop my Boa. Yep. So I did get a little look-see into his hand. He does have one brick in hand, right? 1 brick out of 3 cards. So now I have a little bit of extra knowledge that maybe I shouldn't have known due to that little misplay on his side. So going into my 10 Dawn turn here, still facing a pretty scary board on the other side. Yes, I could Gravity Blade potentially here, but I only have 2 targets. And they're honestly not the targets that I'm scared of, right? I'm scared of the Gecko. I'm scared of the Stussy at this point. This 2 9k attackers going into this next turn. And so I decide he's got 3 cards in hand. And, I sat there for half a second and go, Lucci's brick a lot, right? So let's just play into the fact that maybe he bricked. So I'm going to go 7. We're going to hit leader for 7. And he just snap takes it. And I go, huh. All right, let's go 8. And he just snap takes it again. And I go, no way. So here I sit in the tank and I go, okay, I have 6 on up. I've got 1 attacker. That's a 2k attacker. I could make her an 8k, swing 8k. All right. What else can I do this turn? I've got a Boa, right? So I could just play the Boa, freeze the Moria, and then I have 4 attackers, and I have like 4k in hand. So I was like, I'd survive. But I decided to make maybe the more ballsy play. I keep thumbing that Boa, right? Boa would probably be the best play. Like honestly, the safest play is just Boa, freeze like the Stussy or the Gecko, right? And just like tank some hits. Like if they try to go for game, right, which they'll probably do, they'll probably like. Honestly, Lucci is like such a conservative deck most of the time that it's just going to probably wipe my board and pressure life. So like going into my next turn, I'm probably just gonna have my leader, and will probably play a blocker. So like this turn is like the only turn I have to potentially go for game. And so I'm just sitting here. I'm like, all right, how many cards you in hand? And then I'm like, he took those hits so fast. He didn't even look at his hand. He took those hits so fast. There's no way. Maybe he can get out of this AK. Maybe he bricked really hard. And so I'm like, man, I could stall the game out and probably just lose. Or I could just go for it and maybe just steal the game. So sitting there looking at my 6 on, man, dude, this is such a tough decision. But I've played a Lucci a lot, like personally, and I know just how bad Lucci can brick, right? Lucci can brick so hard sometimes. Because I think most Lucci lists run like 8 to 10 2Ks. And I saw a good amount of them. So we're going to go ahead and set 8 at lead. And he extends the fist. His hand was Isho, Gecko, Kaku, and a stage. He had 1k counter in hand. And that is GG, guys. And that is my tip to beating Lucci. Sometimes you just got to hope the Lucci bricks. You got to go as fast as possible. Protect the board when it matters. And just hope they brick. So I go ahead and show that, like, you know, I could have bowed next turn. And then... tried to keep the game going, and then we potentially take a peek at my life. And I think my life was like 2k, 1k or something like that. So Gravity Blade, 2k. So I would have Gravity Bladed the Lucci and then had 2 more 2k. So I was definitely living that next turn, even if this 8k swing didn't go off. But we ended up pulling it out, and so I ended up finishing with a 4-0 record. Did end up splitting in the grand finals because it was getting late, but pretty good run with Dofi.